All right, we're live. So I want to welcome you all to Pastor's Point of View. My name is Dr. Andy Woods. Pastor Jim McGowan is not with me today. He was in the office, but he's still recovering a little bit from some issues. So he should be back with me next week. But I am thrilled from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, and there's a lot of distance between there, by the way, to have my good friend Brannon Howse to interview him. And it's kind of fun for me to do this because for the last, I think I've known you since probably 2017. I've been on countless interviews on your show, and now I actually have a show to interview you on. So
Well, thank
welcome,
you so
Brannon.
much. It's nice to be on the other side. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me, for sharing your platform. I notice your videos get like 10,000 views within 24 hours. So you got a pretty good sized platform there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that's your fault because you're the guy that encouraged me to start this show.
Well, I'm
And
glad
so
you did. I'm
so
glad
here
you
we are.
did.
So anyway, Brandon, I want to talk a little bit to you today about something that you've been working on 24/7. I mean, at least you were until you got it out. Then you went to a different project, which we can talk about too, but your brainwashed video. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the absolute proof video that you produced. Yeah, very good. Show that. And you've made that available everywhere. I noticed they were playing it on, what is it, OANN.
Mhm.
Where can people watch that if they want to, or where can they get the DVD copies?
Well, thank you for asking. They can watch it for free at wvwtv.com/proof, wvwtv.com/proof. They can also order a copy there for our cost of duplicating and mailing $4.99. But we filmed this in 3 days and we post edited it in 3 days. So the whole thing was done in 6 days. There were two other companies that were asked would they consider doing this. Both of them turned it down. One of them said there's just no way you could do that. And then when Mike Lindell and Mary Fanning, who I'd been working with, and we'll tell you how, came and said, hey, you know what, we think, we know you're really busy with everything else you have going on, cranking out all the TV shows and everything you're already doing. So we kind of hesitant to ask because your work schedule is already crazy, but would you be willing to do this? And I said yes. And it turned out that I got a phone call from one major broadcaster. I mean, everybody would know his name if I said it. And he said, I want to congratulate you. He said, when Mike said something about doing this, I said to him, tell the guy in Memphis, good luck. And so it was a major national leader, a talk show host that didn't think it could be done. And Nick, to be honest with you, when we started this project, I didn't realize they wanted it done in 6 days.
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks, even that would be huge. But we had to work 21-hour days. And then then the last day was 24 hours. But I think when they watch it, people will be shocked at the quality of the production and the content. Mike Lindell brought in the experts from around the country. A few appeared by Skype, but the rest of them were sitting at the same news desk that you sit at when you do your show from our studio.
Yeah. And you also got this playing on, what is it called?
One American News.
OANN.
One
And
American News.
it was like playing around the clock.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I remember in the past, you've had some difficulty getting them to accept your stuff. Well, they were sure interested in this.
They sure were. And I don't know why in the past, a little 15-second spot was about our documentary Siege was an issue. I should have probably pursued that more. Now that I've gotten to know some of them, I think I could have, gotten that taken care of, but I just took the no and kept moving. But yeah, they and not only did they carry this all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and I think Mike Lindell was the one that took care of that cost of producing all that and buying that airtime. But then they turned around and did an interview of Steve Bannon interviewing Mike Lindell and
I saw that.
asking some pretty tough questions. And Steve Bannon was in DC and at the One American News Station network, and Lindell was in San Diego. They filmed it, and then they sent the parts to me and asked if, Lindell asked if I would produce it and put it together. And so that I got it like 2 a.m. And then I had to have it turned around and back to them that 3 o'clock 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock that same day. So
Yeah.
I had about 12, 13 hours with that, and 2 hours of that was compressing it and uploading it. So 4 hours of that. They got it with 12 minutes to spare before it went live, for the scheduled time. So so now we've actually produced not only this one, which they've aired, then I actually produced a special for them that they actually filmed the chatter of, and then I put it all together.
Yeah. Well, in case people have been stuck under a rock and don't even know what we're talking about, let me just give this background, because I like what you said. You talked about a high-ranking person that that says, I've been waiting for somebody to do this. And that's how I felt about it. But going back to November the 3rd, election night, we all went to bed. I went to bed about 10:30 thinking, Trump's a shoo-in. We wake up the next morning and all of a sudden Biden had made up ground that statistically is impossible for him to make up that ground that fast with that number of, areas uncounted supposedly. And then they started putting cardboard over the windows, and they wouldn't let us, our side, inspect I call them the Hugo Chavez, voting machines, et cetera, et cetera. And our side kept saying fraud, fraud, fraud. And the other side kept saying, where's the proof? And they just kept chanting it over and over again. And so they, if you repeat a lie long enough, people will start to believe it. And they're basically telling us not to trust our senses, not to trust what we saw. In all my years watching politics, I've never seen them shut down the voting, or the counting, I should say, in the middle of the night. And every time this was contested, they kept saying, where's the proof? Well, here you guys come along and you actually produce the proof. And I would say about 2/3 of your movie was information I had heard before from other sources. You guys said it maybe in a different way. But by the time you got to that final third, I don't know how you felt about this, but that final third where you documented the electronically, I don't know what you call them, IPN numbers or whatever, of foreign sources tapping into our system and altering the vote to the point where it's not contested that they did this, because you can electronically determine when they tapped in, who was tapping in. And very clearly, you've got foreign interference with an American election from China, Russia, Iran, all of the sworn enemies of America. And boom, you guys produced it within a 2-hour time spot. The proof is in. And you would think that the left would shut up and say, okay, there's the evidence, but that's not the reaction you've gotten, has it? It's just been one attack after another. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how people have received this. Do you see any fruit, that's come out of it? And what kind of personal attacks have the three of you gone through? And then there's also a backstory about how the three of you were brought together almost providentially, supernaturally, to put this together in such a short period of time. So maybe you could fill in the gaps on some of those issues.
Well, those are all great questions. Let me start with the first one, or the last one there. I have a friend of mine that I've known for over 20 years who has attended many of our Worldview Weekend conferences out of Minneapolis, Tom. And Tom sent me the business card, a picture of a business card of Mike Lindell's associate or assistant, administrative assistant. And he had met Mike at a rally in Minnesota in the Twin Cities, where his headquarters is. And he had met him and then said, hey, I have someone I think you should be interviewed by who's on like 55 terrestrial Christian stations. You'd be a great guest for him. I think the two of you should get to know each other and he should have you on. And I guess what happened is that he was given a business card of his assistant, had him call this number. So he took a picture of it, sent it to me on his phone and said, hey, call this gal. This is his administrative assistant, and she'll set up an interview between you and Mike Lindell. So I did, and we had him scheduled for radio. And the interview went really well. So we scheduled him for television. We had him on for TV. And so I had a relationship with him from that standpoint of doing radio and TV with him. So as you guys know, since the day after the election, I started covering this issue of voter fraud and election flipping of votes through machines and whatnot and foreign intrusion. And I had General McInerney, 3-star General Thomas McInerney, And it's very important for people to understand that this guy was in charge of all the nuclear weapons for the Pentagon, okay? In charge of all the nuclear weapons for the Pentagon. And at one time in charge of Alaska NORAD, okay? 3-star general. He comes on the show with Mary Fanning, who introduced us, the day after the election. And, Mary was telling me these things. And by the way, I was very familiar with Mary's work because I actually quote her work in my documentary Sabotage. And I show a report by her and Alan Jones on the Club K cargo missile launching systems that we have to be very concerned about being a Trojan horse that are already here in the US, manufactured and exported. 100% exporter is Russia. And that one of the former head of the nuclear program for Saddam Hussein, Dr. Chafer, his family now has Gulf Tanner and has been given a multi-decade contract to run Port Canaveral out of Florida. And they're in this relationship with Gulf Tanner, according to the research of Mary Fanning and Alan Jones. And this Gulf Tanner has a lid that lifts up and up pops 4 cruise missiles. And it looks like a regular cargo container. Well, that was the research of Mary Fanning and Alan Jones. And I talk about it extensively in Brainwashed America. Ironically, also in Sabotage. Also in Sabotage, I have an interview with Phil Haney, the former Department of Homeland Security officer, Phil Haney, who was killed, I think murdered a year ago, tomorrow, the 20th. Wow. Murdered a year ago tomorrow, the 20th. And the FBI still has not figured it out. That's interesting. They can figure out the Nashville bomber and his motive within 24 hours, but within a year, they don't have the motive or who did it. For Phil Haney, I think there's something funny there going on, and it's not funny. But Phil is in my documentary Sabotage, and he is talking about the Club K cargo system. He knew Mary Fanning, and so I knew her research. And I sent it to a friend of mine in the intelligence arena that had 600 agents answering to him. And he verified what she was saying. He didn't know about the Club K cargo system. It wasn't in his area of expertise. And he called me and he said, not only is it true, but I'm now passing out her and Alan Jones's report to key members of Congress that sit on congressional committees and giving the report to generals to warn them about this Trojan horse of a Pearl Harbor 2.0. So her research had been vetted by people in the intelligence arena that I know and trust and have for years. So when Mary calls me about the voter fraud, I instantly, I'm like, well, I know Mary. She and I never had a chance to talk. It seemed as though people were trying to keep us apart, to be honest. She wanted my number. I wanted her number, but we were aware of each other's work, reading each other's work. She's watching my shows, but we'd never been able to make contact. Finally, we got each other's number. We make contact. I'm very aware that she's credible, and she starts laying out all that's going on with foreign intrusion and attack. And I don't have to question her work so much because her work precedes, her reputation precedes her. So when she brings on General McInerney, this 3-star general, the day after the election, I mean, really, seriously? I mean, this guy's credibility is amazing. So for 20 days, listen now, for 20 days, I'm on radio and TV talking about this. You know this to be true. You were watching it.
Right, sure.
The day after the election to the 27th of November. That's 20 days. And Mary and I are talking about this with General Vallely, General McInerney, Alan Jones. And on the 27th of November, while I'm live on TV on that Sunday night, I am told that General Michael Flynn may call into the show. He may not. Well, you saw the show. Literally a minute and a half into the live TV show, General Michael Flynn calls in. The first TV interview that he did since his presidential pardon, which he didn't do anything to be pardoned for because it was all fake, as you know, but he had to get one. So he doesn't call up any other talk show host first. He calls us first. Now, why? I want to make it very clear. He didn't call up because I'm a great interviewer, okay? He called because of what we were talking about for 20 some odd days. He called because General McInerney was on the line. He called, I think, because Mary Fanning was on the line. They were there. And what had we been talking about for all of these days? Cyber war, flipping of votes, cyber attack, the largest cyber war attack on our voting history in the cyber war in world history. And what does he come on as the former head of this Department of Intelligence agency? And 3-star general, what does he come on and say? He says, we've just gone through the largest cyber war attack on our voting system ever, and cyber attack in world history. He's validating what we're saying, right? Now, he never mentions any specific program, and I never asked him about any specific program because I knew better than that, and I don't think he could speak to it because he may have been read in on it. And these are what are called special access programs, SAP programs, special access programs. And if you've been read in on one, you can't confirm it and you can't deny it. You can't talk about it. You can't confirm it or deny it. You can't talk about it. So I didn't ask, he didn't say, but he talked about cyber war on our voting system, and he affirmed cyber war in our voting system. Remember his bio. Remember what he was in charge of. And so when we're talking about all this for those many days, and then he calls in, that's pretty amazing. Well, finally, we're trying to get all of this information, as you talked about, the actual group of guys that knew this was going to happen and recorded in real time, longitude, latitude, IP address, MAC address, date, time, servers, where the attacks would be coming from, many of them overseas, many of them from China, to attack our electronic voting systems here in America and hack them. They know it's going to happen. Mary Fanning and Alan Jones put out an article the end of October telling you the states that would be attacked. Now, how would they know that? How would they know which states were going to be attacked? So a group of people who had been government contractors and inside the intelligence arena knew this was coming. Some of them had been trying to warn for months elected officials, members of Congress, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security. They've been trying to warn for months that this was going to happen. And it all fell on deaf ears. Why? And so they knew it was going to happen, and they recorded it, as they tell us, in real time. Now, we're like, we got to get this to the president. We've got to get this to President Trump, because we were believing that he had people around him that were being locked out. We could not get there through the normal people we had known, maybe like Michael Flynn and others. There's a lot of deep state people trying to really muddy the waters and not let people get back. And I think at one point, some of these people had been locked out, then got back in, and then were pushed back out because there's a bubble, and they can control the president's schedule, and he may not even know what's going on, right?
Well, actually, Patrick Byrne in an interview said that. I heard him talk about how there's a bubble around the president, and his own people, are keeping information away. So he may not even be aware of what's going on. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So Mary and I are talking multiple times a day, almost 24 hours a day for weeks on end, and doing tons of radio, TV, breaking in and doing TV beyond our normal Sunday night schedule, and interviewing amazing people and talking about this and how we need to get this to the president. We had people calling the White House. We had people emailing the White House saying, you need to get this information from these people, and here's what who you need to get a hold of. And nothing was happening. And so on January 9th, Mary and I were talking on the phone, and she said, we're at a dead end. We don't seem to have a way to get this information to the president, and the clock is ticking toward January 20th. And I said, I only have one person left in my Rolodex that I think has access to the president and the courage to do something about it. And I said, and that's Mike Lindell. So she said, you think we should call him? And I said, yes. So I put her on hold, and I flipped over and I called Mike, and he answered in the evening of January 9th. I have a screenshot of it. When we were in post edit, he turned to me in post edit and he said, what day was it you guys called me? I said, January 9th. And he said, how do you know that off the top of your head so quick? I said, I have a screenshot of the call. He laughed. He said, really? And I pulled up my phone and showed him a screenshot of the 21 minutes, the date, the time, everything. He said, why did you do that? I said, because I believed that was likely going to be a historic phone call. If I knew you and what I knew about you and your story, because I'd read your book and interviewed you, if I knew you and I knew what I thought you were going to do based on getting the information to you that we were going to get to you, based on the information you already had, we're already doing your own due diligence and research, added to the information we're about to give you, I thought this guy actually will do something. And I want this recorded for my kids and grandkids, because I think this might be an historic phone call. And he just laughed. He thought that was amazing that you recorded it and kept that for historical purposes. And so I called him up, clicked, and said, hey, I got a lady on the line by the name of Mary Fanning. Do you mind if I conference her in with you? We have something we need to tell you about the election. And he said, sure. So I clicked over and I introduced her and I said, this is her bio. I quote her in my documentary Sabotage. I had her vetted by my friend Phil Haney, who's now passed away, but he was Department of Homeland Security whistleblower. I've had her vetted by a friend of mine who has 600 agents answering to him in the intelligence arena for one of the 3-letter agencies. I said her work is stood up scrutiny, and what she's going to tell you is going to sound sensational, but you can trust her. And I said, with that, Mary, the floor is yours. And she began to lay all of this out. And at some point, I guess we kept trying to sell him that this was legit. He needed to look at it. And he stopped and he said, you had me from hello. And he said, hang up your phone. I'm going to make a critical phone call and I'll be back in touch. Thus began several days of phone calls back and forth and briefing key people until that day that Mike Lindell goes to the White House and the telephoto lens of the photographers pick up his paperwork.
Yeah.
Now we knew he was going that day. We knew he was going that day. We knew that was happening. And if that photograph had never been taken, this operation that we were involved in would have never been revealed or documented to the American people. People may not have even believed it, say, oh yeah, whatever. It sounds like a great story, but I doubt you guys got him to be able to go there and he got in. No, there's the proof. He got there, he went in, and his notes about martial law or whatever, those were notes that someone else had given him to talk about from an attorney if he had time to do it. But that's not why he was going there. He was going there to talk about the documentation of the real time, the documented steal in real time. And so he goes in and he has that conversation with the president. But because that photo was taken and released, that gave us permission to talk about it publicly. So we brought him on my TV show and talked about it with Mary. We brought him on our radio show. And so through all this, we're developing a closer relationship until finally the idea was we need to put this in a documentary because the American people are being lied to. They're being brainwashed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, like I said, they checked with a few other people thinking my schedule was too full with all I had going on. And other people were like, that's too big of a project, too fast. You can't do something that fast. And one guy actually said, tell the guy in Memphis, good luck. I don't know how you could do that fast. But by God's grace, we did. And Mike got some experts here in our studio. We had a studio full of experts. My wife, you know how she is with her catering and cooking. And she rolled out the red carpet for them as she does for you guys, all the broadcasters here. She fed all these people and kept them happy until it was their time to film. And they were all here for 3 days filming. Some of them were here for just 1 day, but 3 days of filming and then 3 days of post-editing, 21-hour days, and Absolute Proof was born. And it was seen by 70 million people in the first 4 days, not counting One America News. And now we're over 100 million. So that's how it came about, Andy.
Yeah, well, that's an awesome story. I think that's a providential thing. I think that's a God thing. I mean, Mike Lindell, from what I can tell, is a very committed Christian, and you are, and I'm sure Mary.
Well, I'll tell you, we spent 6 days with him, and long hours, and he is a very committed Christian. And I watched him under very stressful situations. Sitting at this news desk in this very chair that I'm sitting in is when he got the phone call that Mattress Firm, was like, we're canceling you. He was here when he found out that Twitter had canceled his company's Twitter feed. You can't believe the attacks this guy was under that I was watching for 6 days. Well, you know what I said to him? I said to him, I said to him at one point, I've never seen a guy under so much attack, sustained attack, and I've not seen you once start yelling and screaming at people.
Yeah.
And he's the real deal.
I started praying for him when I saw that Saturday Night Live had targeted him.
He was here in our studio the night that aired.
Yeah. And so it's all about ridicule and making fun of somebody. But, Mike Lindell is a true hero. I was thrilled that he allowed us to use the WVW code to order pillows and whatnot. We did at our house.
Well, thank you.
And so we're very happy, because of it. But
and by the way, let me just say that's one way that we have paid for streaming this. I mean, we're letting people stream it at wvwtv.com/proof. Our streaming bill was $2,400 a month. Okay. And that was to be for a 12-month contract, $2,400 a month. In November, after the election took place, our streaming bill shot up and is now around $10,000 a month. So every time someone streams something for free, whether it's your show, my show, Proof, Brainwash, they think, oh, it's free. Well, it is free for them, but for us, we have to pay for the streaming bill. We blew past our streaming bill. We used up the entire $30,000 contract. It's supposed to last a year. We used it up in around 3 months, and we had to enter into a new contract, and it's still were off the charts with streaming bill. And so when he said, look, use this promo code WVW, tell them to go to mypillow.com. They'll save up to 66%. I'll give half of the proceeds back to your network.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something. That has been a huge, huge godsend. Or Andy, I don't know what we would do, frankly, because of the huge streaming bills that we've acquired. Not to mention the production of everything else we've done. So I appreciate the audience doing that. And let me tell you, because of that, that's why I released Brainwashed America Part 1 on the 15th of February for free. You know that this one is 6 hours long, this documovie. This documovie is 8.5 hours long, and I sell both of them. So I was going to release Brainwashed America as a 6-hour, 8-hour documovie and sell it. But I decided to release Part 1 after Absolute Proof came out because so many people were saying, what now? What now? And I said, well, what you've got to understand is this is a massive brainwashing, disinformation, propaganda campaign, whether it's COVID, which was used to pull in the ballots, and the election fraud. These are two of the largest brainwashing psyops ever performed on the American people. And the first 2 hours of Brainwashed America was already done and sitting there waiting for me to do the next part based on how the election turned out. But I decided to go ahead and release it. Instead of selling it, make it for free. And again, we're funding that by people that go to mypillow.com and use the promo code WVW. So this, Mike Lindell has opened up for us a whole new model for maybe funding more and more free programming. So again, we do appreciate people using the promo code WVW at mypillow.com because that's how we're paying for a lot of this.
Yeah, well, that was one of my questions for you is how did you produce this in 6 days and put it out there in live streaming, for free? And I think you kind of answered that. But here's another question I have for you related to the fruit, past and future, that's come out of this movie, Absolute Proof. I guess I was sort of disappointed that Lindell went and talked to Trump, when they caught him on camera and all that kind of stuff. Why Trump didn't do something about it then and there? Maybe you could fill me in on that. And also, this movie comes out, and it's wonderful that all these people are being educated, but is it going to go beyond that? Because we need things to move away from just the idea level to the legislative level, where we have an actual political reform in this country for election integrity. Because if we can't trust our votes, we're not living in a free country anymore.
For sure not.
And I'm of the opinion, well, I'm going to let you say it. Do you believe this, that America right now is in the heart of a political coup?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're in the middle of a and Brainwashed, if they go to brainwashthemovie.com, they can watch the first 2 hours of Brainwashed America for free, brainwashthemovie.com. Part 2 will come out May 1st, which is May Day, Communist Day, will be part 2. And in Brainwash the Movie at brainwashthemovie.com, Brainwashed America, I say that we are in the middle of a Marxist revolution. We're in the pre-beginnings of a Marxist revolution. This has been a cyber war, a cyber coup, a coup d'etat. And this has been the first psych op, brainwashing, propaganda, active measures, whatever you want to call it. These are all words for brainwashing. One of the largest brainwashing operation ever carried out on the American people, as I said, was COVID-19, and with a death rate of 0.003. Not that it doesn't exist, not that people haven't gotten respiratory diseases and died, but the death rate is 0.003, and mostly 78-year-olds with underlying condition, right? 78 or older. So we shut down the whole economy. We destroy the economy. We destroy religious liberty and freedom, and we arrest people for not wearing a mask. In the video at brainwashthemovie.com, you'll see a lady being tased and arrested and handcuffed for not wearing a mask outside, while the cops that arrest her aren't wearing a mask, that run up, they're not wearing a mask. I mean, this has been gigantic brainwashing. The second biggest psych op was that this was a free and fair election, nothing to see here. And if you complain about it, you're a psycho and you're a weirdo and a conspiracy nut. So if they watch Brainwashed America at brainwashthemovie.com, they're going to see that I state we are in the middle of a Marxist revolution. Now, to answer your question about President Trump, you can't imagine from the people that I've talked to the disinformation he was getting. Mm-hmm. And you've heard that. I think that's kind of come out in public by some people, right?
Sure.
He wasn't being told everything.
Yeah.
Disinformation, contradicting information, keeping him in a fog. So this movie, I think, is making a big impact, and you can't believe the high-ranking leaders within the conservative movement and were in the Trump administration that have seen it and were shocked about the information contained, but they also were complimentary of the quality. How on earth did you guys crank this out in 6 days? I think it's providential. I think there's so many providential stories I could tell you. Here's one. I needed a new iMac. I have one. It's getting old, but I needed another, and I needed to train my soon-to-be 18-year-old son in on post-editing so he could assist me in some projects. Because, I need to be cranking out your TV show and others more regularly, but I got all this work on me. So one afternoon, I order a brand new iMac Pro, just like I picked up the phone, called Apple, and just did it. The thing shows up and sits in the front entryway for 2 days till I finally told my son, Logan, get it out of the box and set it up. And then I'm going to teach you how to post-edit television. And I taught him how to post-edit TV, very rudimentarily, basic stuff. And I'll teach you the bells and whistles, but this is the basics, and I'm overseeing what he's doing. Well, then I get this call, can you produce this documentary? Well, I was not using him to help me for the first few days, but the final 48 hours, I had to have him jump in and start post-editing on stuff while Mike Lindell sat next to him watching what was going on and then pulling the clips he wanted while I was over here doing this, because I was working 21-hour days, trying to stay ahead so that when Mike would come in, he could watch the clips that I've pulled and say, yeah, I like that clip, or hey, can you cut this question out, that kind of, and then leave that on the editing floor. Well, I got where he caught up with me. And I needed my son, my 17-year-old, over here post-editing on this interview so Mike could sit there and mark on a legal pad what clips he wanted, and then Logan would cut those out and then send them over to me, and I would do the magic and put it all together in the film.
Yeah.
If I had not ordered that iMac, if I had not taught my son 2 weeks earlier to post-edit TV, I don't know that we could have gotten this out. That was providential. I could just tell you one providential story after another like that, Andy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're teaching your children a skill, which is what fathers are supposed to do for their kids.
You know that the Huffington Post was mocking, the Huffington Post mocked that I had my son working with me on this. Isn't that, as you said, what a father does is teach their kid a skill or a trade? You know, the Huffington Post also said that the guy that directed this, Brannon Howse, put out a movie called Siege and about globalism. And they were mocking that I was talking about how the Islamists and Marxists were trying to overthrow America. And the Huffington Post said, and it included anti-Semitic trop. Really? Well, if you watch this 8.5 hours, you won't find any anti-Semitic trop. Well, that's ironic from a guy who's held a conference in this studio, plus the Ozarks that you spoke at, which all was on fighting anti-Semitism with my Jewish friend and yours, Olivier Melnick, my Jewish friend and yours, who I met these guys through you, by the way, Arnold Frutenbaum, music provided by my Jewish friend, Marty Getz. The whole film and documentary was on fighting anti-Semitism. At this news desk, Olivier Melnick does a TV show called Fight the New Anti-Semitism. And here's the Huffington Post putting out an article attacking absolute proof by saying the directors put out other documentaries on globalism and anti-Semitic trop. They're liars. There's no anti-Semitic trop.
In fact, the first conference that I spoke at that you put on, I did a talk on Revelation 12, the mystery of anti-Semitism.
That's right.
And of course, the mystery of anti-Semitism, Revelation 12, is Satan. And it was you that asked me to do that talk. And then you're the one that asked me to do a talk in a subsequent year on Zechariah 12, which is about the nations coming against Israel in the last days and God, supernaturally dealing with them. So anybody that wants to throw the anti-Semitic label on you clearly doesn't have a very high intellect, or they haven't done a lot of homework.
Or they're just liars.
Or they're just liars.
And I'll tell you, they've done the same thing to Mike Lindell. They make up stories about him that aren't even true. I think one of them was made up about him having some kind of romance with some actress out in the Hamptons or something. And the actress even came out and said, I've never met him. I don't know him. Mike's like, I've never been to that part of the country. I think there's legal trouble for the people that put that out. But from what I heard, but the point I'm making, they will make up lies out of whole cloth. All right. They will just make it up. Let me tell you what's coming with artificial intelligence and deep fakes. They are going to have video of us that's not us. It's deep fakes. They're fake, computer generated. It will look like me. It will sound like me. And they will have us in some day, in some form. I pray not, but this is what they will be able to do and already can do in some I've seen it. They'll have you and I saying things on video. That's not us. We never said that. That's all computer generated.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of, oh, well, he's a very good guy with a great marriage and he's a moral guy. That matters, but it won't matter to them. They will actually be able to make it up on video and audio.
Wow. Well, that's a frightening, brave new world that we're moving into. And that's why I started praying for Mike Lindell when I started hearing about that Saturday Night Live skit. It was obvious that he was a target for a smear.
Do you know Jimmy Kimmel played our video and made fun of him?
Wow.
Jimmy Kimmel played clips of Absolute Proof and made fun of him, which, I actually put out a tweet and said, thank you, Jimmy Kimmel. And by the way, Jimmy Kimmel and another group accused him of setting up a studio in a box. And Jimmy Kimmel said, I guess he went out and he set himself up what looks like a studio in a newsroom. No, he did not. These people are so stupid. They are dumb as a box of rocks. Romans 1, fools. They actually are so stupid, they can't type in WVW Broadcast Network, which is into the front of the news desk in the documentary over and over and over and over. You would think they would say, let's see, WVW Broadcast Network. Boom, what pops up? Oh, yeah, this guy produces all kinds of TV shows, which they would see years there. They're so dumb. They're so dishonest. They don't even do their homework to say, this is actually a real existing broadcast network, and the guy that runs it's on 55 terrestrial stations, and he does all kinds of stuff. And apparently Mike Lindell went to his studio in the Mid-South and recorded this. No, they're making fun and saying that Mike basically bought himself a studio in a box, set up a studio and did this. No, He came to a legitimate broadcast network and we filmed it. But this is what I'm trying to convey to the American people is never underestimate either how stupid or how evil or how much lies these people will tell.
Yeah, well, as you like to say, maybe their keyboard on their computer is broken.
Yeah, the search engines quit working, I guess.
The letters WVW aren't there anymore. And
by the way, anyone offended that I'm calling them stupid, these are biblical terms. The Bible calls them fools, vain, useless, futile. This isn't name calling. This is what they are. These are vernaculars we use. But the Bible, Jesus called the people of his day, the religious leaders and the fools of his days, whitewashed tombs, full of dead man's bones, sons of Satan. Jesus, we've turned nicer than Jesus. A lot of people want to be nicer than Jesus and won't call a spade a spade. And that was the appeal of Donald Trump, by the way. He was willing to say what everybody thought, but few people will say. Well, I'll say it. These people most of them are dumb as a box of rocks. If they had to go get a real job and produce something, they would starve to death. That's how stupid they are.
Yeah. Plus, the expression "useful idiot" has an actual, historical context to it.
Right.
But you've answered the question about Trump because it did mystify me why he didn't take action. But apparently, the deep state had him hemmed in at that point, right down to what kind of information he was able to receive. So he was in a fog or a cloud, as you say. But do you see your video not just educating people, which it obviously is doing, if it's had, what did you say, 70 million hits?
Oh, we're over 100 million now.
Yeah.
And that's not counting One American News. That's just online.
Right.
And that's like 30 million downloads overseas. Why are people overseas so interested in this, Andy? You know the answer. Why do people overseas care about this?
Well, I would say because people overseas see America as the last vestige of hope and opportunity. And if America falls, there's no hope left for the world.
Yeah, and that's how Mike Lindell concluded the documentary, quoting Ronald Reagan: "America's a shining city on a hill and a beacon up to the world for liberty. And if the lights go out here, they go out everywhere."
Yeah. In fact, Roger Winthrop, I think or maybe it was John Winthrop, one of the early Puritans in the 1600s, when he first came here, called our new experiment that we were developing, a shining city on a hill. And in fact, that language comes right out of the Sermon on the Mount. People will see that in Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. So here's, we're getting close here to having to wrap up, but here's a quick final question I have for you. The education is phenomenal. The education is great. But what I want to know is this actually going to transition or transform into something?
All right,
Because
let me tell you.
we desperately need election integrity restored in this country, or we don't have a country. And let me say this real quick. I don't even like it when people call this voter fraud. To me, fraud marginalizes or minimizes what happened. This is a cyber attack
Yep.
on America. It's just as real as foreign soldiers landing on our shores. What happened?
Absolutely.
And
It's
so
the new way of warfare. It's the
yes.
new way of warfare.
And of course, Chinese warfare, the first several steps of it relate to information. And that's why your other video that we don't have too much time to talk about, Brainwashed, is so significant, coming out at the same time. But my question is this going to go somewhere? Is this going to turn into meaningful election reform so that we can save the United States?
Well, let me answer that question. But first, let me remind people, we're not just being attacked from the left. There are people on the so-called right attacking us. And what the American people will be shocked to find out, that I have uncovered in dealing with this personally, is the number of so-called conservative blogs or websites that are doing the bidding for the deep state, for the CIA and other groups, and the black hat guys in the CIA and the intelligence community are, i.e. the deep state. There are a lot of conservative websites that are not conservative. They either are front groups for the CIA black hat ops, or they are being paid. I don't know which one, but we are being attacked by people on the right. Why? Because there are those inside the intelligence arena that do not want their powerful surveillance tools, I believe, revealed. And we've had on NSA whistleblowers. We've had on 3-star General Retired McInerney. We've had on Colonel Waldron. They're all in the, by the way, Colonel Waldron, he goes into the detail with some of the CIA and what they saw on the night of the election going on overseas.
And there you're talking about hammer and scorecard, right?
And those words are never used in this documentary. And yet, and we never discussed Dennis Montgomery, who has been tied to a lot of this. And yet the right has attacked us. Some on the right have attacked us. Yet I'm like, those words aren't used in the documentary. Dennis is not discussed in this documentary, but they go there and try to discredit what we're talking about. Well, again, those programs you're talking about would fall under the category, we're told, of what are called special access programs. So number one, how do these people, so-called people on the right, writing for so-called conservative websites, I didn't realize they were read in on these special access programs. And if they were, they're not supposed to be talking about them. Number two, how do they know what special access program we're talking about? Number three, we got this information from multiple people that had been involved in the intelligence arena as contractors, and many of them who knew it was coming, as I said, months in advance, tried to alert the FBI, members of Congress, DHS, and there were different groups that were both recording this and documenting this on the night of the election. Now, if the Central Intelligence Agency and the bad guys in there were involved in this, and they're using some of these powerful special access programs, from what I understand, they don't want the American people to know what we're telling you, because I believe they want to keep using this to surveil the American people, brainwash the American people, blackmail the American people, including our judges and our members of our legislature, both at the state and federal level. They want us to roll, I believe, into a police state where they control every aspect of our life. They can blackmail people, control people, leverage people, and including not have elections, but have selections. And so when you see people on the right or conservative websites or blogs attacking us, you need to ask yourself, who are they? Who are they really? Who might be paying them? Because trust you me, there are a lot of people, I believe, working for the intel community, and you just think these are conservatives interested in America. No, their first commitment appears to be to the deep state. Now, as far as what we got to do, there is talk of federalizing elections, not having your Secretary of State be in charge of them. There's talk of federalizing. There's talk of permanently allowing for these mail-in ballots or people to register without confirmation of their residency and who they are and their citizenry. There's talk now of legalizing 22 million illegal immigrants here in America.
Well, real quick, the mail-in ballots, even Jimmy Carter himself, condemned those, a man of the left. But anyway, sorry to keep going.
So there's federalizing of elections. There is the issue of, are we going to go back to paper? Are we going to count these locally and then have a paper trail and have custody? Or are we going to continue to use these machines? And we have the Dominion people in this documentary admitting that there's a modem in this. Just before I interviewed you, before you started interviewing me, did you see that I was talking to, could you hear my conversation with Mike Lindell?
It sounded to me like you were talking to Mary Fanning, because I recognized her voice.
And then after that, I was talking to Mike Lindell, and that may have been when you were having technical issues and you couldn't hear me. But I was talking to him, and he said, you can say this in your TV show here. I said to him, hey, there's stories floating around about Dominion is imminently about to sue you. This has been the talk the last 24 hours. Any news on that? He said, you can tell that radio audience or that TV audience you're talking to, about to be interviewed on, that I am begging for Dominion to sue me. I am begging for, and he said, and I'm not going to discriminate against Dominion, any of the other voting machine companies. He says, I'm inviting them to sue me. Well, I think what he wants is discovery.
Yeah, right.
He wants, and you're a trained attorney. You're a licensed attorney and a pastor and a PhD in theology. So as an attorney, let me just ask you, isn't what he's wanting is discovery, Andy Woods?
Yeah, I would definitely say yes. And, this whole thing, it's about intimidation.
Yes.
And I noticed, I follow Sidney Powell and some of the others on Telegram. Their Dominion is suing her for like 2.3 billion with a B dollars, which is ridiculous, first of all. And I really doubt
they supposedly threatened to sue Giuliani, but what I was told is, or they have supposedly sued Giuliani. I've been trying to get confirmation of that, and everyone I talk to who is in the know says that's not true. That's fake news. He has not been sued. I'm trying to get confirmation, show me the filing that he's actually been sued. So if someone comes up with that, send it my way. But some of this sounds like fake news. There hasn't actually been a lawsuit against Giuliani. Now, if that's changed, but a week ago, I was told that is not true. That's fake news. So some of this is, I think, setting a narrative in the population. Now, let me tell you what else we have to worry about. Matt DePerno is the only attorney in America to have a court order to audit the Dominion machines. He said at this news desk. He's in this documentary that everybody can watch for free at wvwtv.com/proof. He's the only attorney in America to have a court order to audit the Dominion machine. If Dominion wants to sue, they're going to have a real problem, because a team of scientific forensics experts came together and audited those machines, Andy. And so what are we showing? Flipped votes. Their forensic report shows all these flipped votes. What are they going to do with that? And let me tell you what to be looking for. Be watching for them to go after, as you'll see in this documentary, the Secretary of the Attorney General of Michigan, threatening attorneys that come after election fraud, threatening, he says, that criminal investigations into members of the state legislature that want to investigate voter fraud, threatening their law license. And you know what else? You be watching. They are going to start going after people's insurance and people's banking. I'm reading articles right now that I got today from one law firm about Biden administration going after people's bank accounts. If you don't agree with this Marxist revolution, they're going to start taking your insurance, your professional license, your professional insurance, your ability to bank, and which seems to me that what we're setting up here is social credit scores. If you don't fall into the right politically correct view, you won't be able to buy or sell. And then you combine that with some kind of mark and a vaccine and biochipping, it's all falling into place. I don't know, but I mean, you're the prophecy expert. You tell me.
No, well, that would be another 3-hour program. But I concur with what you're saying. But just real quick, because some people may be tuning in and they might not even understand this. When we talk about the Dominion machines, we're talking about machines that were created for the purpose of propping up Marxist dictators all over the world, like Hugo Chavez. So they're machines basically designed to manipulate the vote so one guy loses and one guy wins, and it makes the whole thing look legitimate. And
And Andy, not
that's
only that,
what we're relying upon here in the United States of America for the highest office in the land. Go ahead.
and not only that, you don't take my word for it or Andy's word. The scientific forensic experts that were brought together by a court order to audit the machines in Antrim County, Michigan, the only a court order in the country given to an attorney, Matt DePerham, who's in the documentary, said at this news desk, his report, which you'll see screenshots of, in the documentary, shows that the machines had a 68% failure rate.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that failure rate, and all kinds of things could make it throw a failed vote, it goes to what's called adjudication. And that's where someone decides how you admit to vote. You could have a blank ballot go through. That goes to adjudication. Oh, it's a blank ballot. Well, I think they meant to vote for, and they can actually do a click and do a group of adjudication votes, many at one time. Whoop, all the whoever they want. That's what the documentary.
During Bush versus Gore, that's what they called divining the intent of the voter.
Mm-hmm. And then we have something else in the debold system. This is another voting system where Dr. Shiva, who's in the documentary, this is the man who invented email. Okay.
Right. I saw him on your show. Yeah.
He invented email. He's in the museum in DC. Time Magazine has documented this. He sat here at this news desk and in this documentary and discussed his running for U.S. Senate in the primary in Massachusetts, where he won one county by 60%, and he starts losing these others all by the same percentage. Every county he loses by the same percentage. And what ends up being is what's called a weighted ballot. And they actually are deciding how much someone's vote is worth. Oh, you're a white guy and a Christian, Andy. Your vote is only worth 2/3.
So here comes critical race theory, in other words, into voting.
And social credit scores. Your vote doesn't count as much. You're a white Christian. We're not going to count your vote equal with someone else.
Right. And to my mind, there's an easy way to resolve this. Let us inspect the machines, not on their terms, on our terms. Don't give us part of it. Let us inspect the whole machine the way we want to inspect it. And if you won't let us inspect the machines, you must be hiding something. And I guess it was the Secretary of State, I believe in Georgia, that won't even allow that. So if everything that we're saying here is a myth, a lie, a conspiracy theory, why don't you just prove us wrong by letting us inspect the machines? And if you're right and we're wrong, we're going to look like fools at the end of the day. But they won't even allow this basic inspection.
They won't even let people see the video. Mike Lindell, he flew out of here on a Friday morning when we finished it at 5:45. He went out of here with an external hard drive and got on the plane and took off to show it to a VIP and screen it. It was airing that morning by 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, almost in continuous loop on One American News. By the time we finished it, compressed it, uploaded it to them, they downloaded it, put it into their servers. They had 5 minutes to spare, it airing at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on that Friday. Well, that night, he joined us live on TV to launch the film and tell everybody it was out. He shows on his phone. It's in our TV show at WVW-TV. He shows on his phone where Facebook had said and scrambled this being shown, the film, a link to it, as including nudity or partial nudity. Really?
Yeah. Right.
In our documentary, really?
Right. Well, just in closing, Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." And that's the kind of situation that we're in. So we're going to have to sign off at this point, Brannon, just because we're using a particular product and they only let us run for an hour. So
let me say this real quick. Those who think this is political, this is not political. This is not a political documentary. Somebody was wearing a political hat. We made them replace it. Someone was wearing a political pin. We made them take it off. This is for all Americans, regardless of the party or independent. And if you say, well, I'm a Christian, but I'm not into politics. Politics is about the affairs of the city. If you pay your property tax, have a tab on your car, have exit signs at your church, have fire extinguishers, you're involved in the affairs of the city. This is about religious liberty and economic liberty. So this is not about politics and right versus left. This is coming as much from the right and the rhinos and Mitch McConnell and these morons as anywhere else. This is about religious liberty, freedom of speech, economic liberty, parental authority, your private property. So don't sit there, Christians, and say, oh, this is about politics. That's a dirty business. This is about more than that.
Well, it's also not partisan because it's the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia.
Yeah, that's right.
Preventing the common sense inspection.
That's right.
And I would also say this sort of in closing that, yes, Christians should be involved in politics, but this is an issue. This may be, of all the issues out there, this may be the threshold, foundational, fundamental issue of our day. Because if we don't get this fixed, what is the United States? We're no longer a free country. We're just a vassal state of the New World Order, China, Russia, Iran, etc. This is not just voter fraud. That undersells the issue dramatically. It minimizes it. It marginalizes it. This is a cyber warfare attack into the electronic system, voting system of the United States of America. And keep in mind that this was done not as people were voting for dog catcher. They were voting for the highest office in the land. And this was not something that got stolen from Donald Trump. Don't feel sorry for Donald Trump. I never feel sorry for people that own their own jet, for example. This was an assault on we the people. 75 to 80 million of us who overwhelmingly got out and supported Donald Trump. This is an attack on we the people. And if you attack we the people, you attack the foundation of America, because we are supposed to be a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. Well, as you guys can see, Brannon Howse is an ocean of knowledge. I like to call him sort of a Renaissance man, in the sense that he's got expertise across the board, where most of us just have expertise in one or two areas. Brannon knows a lot about a lot of different subjects. And I've got a bunch of notes here I wanted to get through, and we just scratched the surface. So we're definitely going to have you back, my friend. And this is a fun time for me, because since I've known you since, 2016, 2017, I've always been interviewed by you. And now I get I think I said that wrong. You've interviewed me, and now I've got a chance to interview you. So any closing thoughts as we move off?
Let's do it again.
Right.
It's a lot of fun, and I know we have a lot more to cover, and I'd love to tell your audience more about Brainwash, the movie, and how this fits in with what's happening right now with Absolute Proof, because it all goes together. There's so much to inform the audience with. So let's do it again soon.
Absolutely, and keep up the great work. God bless.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for your friendship. Appreciate your friendship.